And we are back, back once again. Like I'm running a radio show, but that's okay. Back once again. I call this like Angular Unfiltered show where we're just chatting with people that I've talked to, like on Twitter or um, around the tech Twitter circles, or I guess we call them Angular Twitter. That's what we'll call it today, anyway. But yeah, I guess y'all already know who I am. I'm Brandon. You can see my name in Twitter there, Brandon T. Roberts. And Devin is also joining me today. I'm super excited about that. So yeah, Devin, you want to tell the people we this is the first time. I just be full disclosure. Like this is the first time we've talked at any length in person, but yeah, we've talked on Twitter. So yeah, if you could tell the people about yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. So thanks for having me on. Really appreciate it. Name's Devin Shoemaker. You can follow me on Twitter. The handle right down there, Paranoid Coder. Been a software engineer one way or another for a long time, like 12 years now, dabbling in a lot of different kinds of technologies and stuff. Yeah, over the last couple of years, I got really into front end stuff, Angular, React, now NX, and right now I'm kind of on this NX plugin train. So that's kind of my main thing, what I'm writing about, what I'm into. So a lot to unpack there, but that's kind of the high level.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So you say you've done some Angular and React. So how much of either one have you done? Are you like middle in both camps, or?
So at this point, I haven't had the opportunity to do Angular like 2 plus professionally. So
Okay.
at my last job, I was kind of
Wait,
the
wait,
first.
wait, wait, wait. Hold up. We're on an Angular show now. We're on an
Give me a
Angular show, and
minute.
you don't just use Angular. Like, what's going on? But go ahead.
Well, that's what you got the free time for, right?
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah. Okay.
yeah, so at my last job, that was kind of my first exposure, which was I guess 6 or so years ago.
Mm-hmm.
At the time, it was when Angular 2.0 was in beta, and my
Mm-hmm.
company opted to stick with Angular JS. So throughout that process, I was learning Angular in my free time, you know, new Angular proper, while trying to deal with
Mm-hmm.
Angular JS and convince them to switch over. And so we never got there, but yeah, at this point, I'd say I'd done more React than Angular, and that's only because of work experience.
Okay.
Around here, there were some Angular jobs, but everyone I kept gravitating towards
Mm-hmm.
wanted React. And so I tried to fight for Angular at my last job when we finally got off Angular JS. But yeah, it's really hard to say which one um, I more prefer or anything like that. I think there's so
Yeah.
many good, bad things about either of them, but I'm definitely more on
You
the
said
framework.
bad thing. You said bad things about it. Did you say bad things about either?
Well, I heard that Ivy, there's some like experimental like repos out there where someone's got JSX working in Ivy.
Oh yeah.
That might be up my alley. I will say I really like JSX. I didn't think I would. I was really kind of against the idea when I first started experimenting with React, but
Hmm.
I've enjoyed playing around with that. So, and maybe that's not a negative, right? That's just a positive over there. It's not a negative
Hmm.
on Angular.
Yeah, I
But
got you.
no. I love being more framework agnostic. You know what I mean? I definitely I know there are haters out there that even just love to troll for the sake of trolling, but
Yeah.
I
They
always
say
love
you either have to
keeping my
use
mind open.
one, you either have to use one or the other. Some people will say you can't use both. You got to pick a side. But yeah, choose whatever you want to use, right?
Hey, best tool for the job. And see what I also like about NX, which I think we'll see if I could ever convince some of my coworkers of this, but I think it opens the door, right? Like we're a React shop now. If it makes
Hmm.
sense to have an Angular app later, it's like maybe that can fit right in without being such a disruptive change.
Hmm.
So it's one of the beautiful
Yeah.
things I think about NX is that opens the door to be more open to these things.
Oh, see, now we're talking about NX here. That's like right up my alley with because I know you've done some. Uh, I know from at least just from watching like the docs and stuff, you've done some stuff with NX already, right? You've at least created one plugin that I know of.
Mm-hmm.
So have you? I guess are you using NX now at your job, or uh,
Yeah.
how did you? I
So
guess how did you get involved with NX in general?
So Chris Whited, who good friend of mine, like I already mentioned, he actually turned me on to NX at one point. I can't remember. We chat all the time, even before or outside of working together. This is like the second job we've had, so this is awesome to get the band back together. But even outside of when we
so, okay, cool. So this is not the first time you guys have worked together.
Yeah, dude, he broke my heart when he left. He worked with me at my last job, and I stayed there long after he left. And I remember like getting that news was like a breakup email. I was like, "Come on, man! Like, you're killing me."
Yeah, I know how that is. Like the same thing with me and my friend Mike. We worked at the same place a couple of times, and he left, and then I stayed there for a while, and then left and went to where he was. So we got the band back together once again, and then I ended up leaving. But yeah, I know how that goes.
Yeah, I mean, everyone's got to like look out for themselves at the end of the day. So like, no hard feelings. But yeah, me and him, I really respect him. He always is on the grind. And I remember a while ago we were just chatting, and he kind of stopped me and was like, "Interrupt. Have you heard of NX? Stop what you're doing. Go take a look." And that was, I'd say, about a month before React support may have gotten dropped. Maybe a few more months, but I remember maybe a few months because I remember working with it, and I was actually, because I was a big fan of Ionic as well, so I was experimenting with getting Ionic working in there and making some Ionic apps because I felt like that kind of cross-platform approach with a mono repo made a lot of sense to me. So I think you could do a lot of reusability with having more of a mobile Tailor app and a desktop app, share a lot of code, share a lot of components. So that was more, hobbyish kind of stuff. And I introduced NX to my last job, sadly, like less than a month before I left.
So you just like, he's like, "Hey guys, here's React and goodbye."
Yeah, I mean, they were already like going towards React, but it was a really bad implementation the way they were doing it. And I saw NX as like a really good solution for that to help organize and structure things. And so I've heard good things. I've checked in. I've got a lot of friends there. Checked in, made sure that things were going well.
So good.
But
you didn't completely leave them out there, so that's good. Yeah.
Right. And so yeah, I've been using NX for a while for personal stuff, just like learning. Pretty much anytime I start up a project, that's usually my go-to if I can. And now at this job, for similar reasons, actually, they were fighting a similar problem as my last job. I've pushed NX. I made some proof of concept projects, and now it's kind of like finding the time to tie the bow on that and basically cut over from our existing repo and stop committing anything to that, and then start using the NX repo. So we're real close. It's just about finding that time and priority.
Cool. So that's pretty interesting. Can you talk a little in maybe a little detail about like what the previous setup was? Was it like all hand rolled or
Yeah.
I know like a lot of people, like I'll be honest, I don't have a lot of React experience. So like how you build a professional React app, whether you use Create React app, I see people using that, or people rolling their own thing with Learner or whatever.
Well, this is a particular situation where we were kind of limited by our legacy system. And so we were actually like building bundles to bring in, as like script tags. And with React, I'm sure you've at least heard at a high level, it's kind of one of the nice things is that you can usually kind of append your components into something legacy pretty easily.
Yeah.
Angular, usually there might be some ways to finagle that in, but it's better off to start off with like your app base as an Angular app.
Yeah.
And so that's basically the decision. Excuse me. That was why React was chosen for both my last job and this current job. They were like, we can't rewrite. So I'm like, all right, I'm kind of losing this battle with Angular. So, but without going into too much detail how that works, that's basically how we're kind of doing things. We're bringing things in through script tags, and we had a Create React app as a base that created some. It was like Webpack was kind of hacked a bit to create these separate bundles because we didn't want our entire code base to be brought in with a script tag on every page load.
Yeah.
So we were creating smaller bundles that were just the components needed for whatever needed to be rendered on the page. And it just wasn't super scalable. Because of all the Webpack changes and stuff, we had a lot of stuff hand rolled. And so updating to the latest version of Create React Apps, kind of libraries and stuff, became difficult. And we were maintaining a lot of configs like Webpack and things like that I don't think anyone was really committed to being an expert on and being willing to like maintain that.
Yeah, I definitely know how that goes. Like I've been in, if you start messing with like infrastructure stuff, then people are like, you're that person.
Yeah.
Now it's your job to manage that thing. And even if you didn't want to. So yeah, if you, like I said, once you start messing with it, people are naturally going to like shove it over to you and you become the expert, quotes of how if something breaks, definitely.
Or just the last person to touch it, like.
Yeah.
So
I looked in the Git commit history, and you were the last person to change these files. So
yeah, man, I've definitely been there. That was the job of mine. I got someplace, and the person who had maintained this application, the separate, it was like a thick Java client too. It was gnarly, like a desktop Java app, and no one was there who had actually worked on it. And so that was one of my first tasks as a junior developer, and the application was called Suite, like Suite. So I became the Suite guy, like immediately. But
that's interesting. Whenever somebody refers to something as gnarly, it's never positive.
That is true.
Especially like in code, there's like, I had to fix this one thing and I had to do some gnarly code, or I looked at somebody's code and it was pretty gnarly. I've yet to see somebody say that was a good thing that they actually wanted to keep doing.
Maybe some skaters or surfers. That might be the exception.
There you go.
But yeah. So, I kind of came into this code base and I saw a lot of this stuff, and, things hadn't been updated in a while, and kind of was like, okay, what's the strategy? And it's kind of like, well, we know it's not perfect, but things are working at the moment. I'm like, okay. And so I started looking at NX, and basically, I was able to take a lot of our actual code, the component code, the things that we cared about, move it into a component library. And then I essentially have, right now it's an app for convenience, but I think I can move the builders around and move it into a library because I think it's more appropriate as a library. But since our, apps, when you build them for production, they create bundles. I just have these apps that only bring in the component I need. So you get all the tree shaking goodness, and it makes a bundle. And so now we're not maintaining Webpack anymore. Our component code is separated from our code that's specific to binding to the legacy app. So as we continue to iterate and eventually get to a full React app, we can just throw away those bits that are, just one-off libraries. So it gave us an opportunity to maintain less code, have like a more just logically separated architecture. And then you get a lot of other.
I can't remember if I asked you this up front or not, but the app that you're migrating away from is AngularJS, is that right?
In my last job, it was. We were on something totally different that's a bit older at this new one. So no, not even on Angular. So, which is all got its pros and cons. Once you get to a certain point of legacy, it all it all blends together. But yeah, so far, like, I'm waiting to get everyone's hands on it. I actually just did a workshop yesterday. We went through like the NX starter tutorial with all the engineers and was asking questions, got them using the CLI. So we're ready to bite that bullet now, and I'm excited. Okay,
so you said you've been using it since the React support has been added. So what is that experience like? I know that we've been working on it, like trying to improve it. So has it changed a lot since you started using it as far as like improvements, or once the React support was there, you kind of were able to take it and run with it?
Yeah, pretty much. So it's worked out really well. I've seen improvements. I've seen bug fixes. There's a couple small oddities where you could tell things maybe lean towards more of the Angular defaults at first, and now, like, where ESLint is getting like more of a priority on the React side now, There's like a couple of small like quality of life improvements, but I didn't ever see like once React support dropped for me, I didn't have any deal breakers with my organization or my little hobby learning projects. So
Cool.
I
So
really liked
let's
it.
talk about some of those like paper cuts. Let's hear some paper cuts you had with the stuff that wasn't quite there. Besides like the whole skewing to Angular, because I'm like I said, I know that it started out more heavily supporting Angular before React and the other things came along.
Yeah, I guess so. One recent one was just way things played out. Like React projects generate Cypress projects as well, right? When for an end-to-end testing thing, if you've got that property enabled. And I think that the configurations for the Cypress project, which is like a dedicated app in NX, defaulted all to TSLint, and a lot of the React stuff, and I think even newly created NX stuff pretty much defaults to ESLint. But there's some like reasons just for the legacy bits of NX and whatnot and kind of the Angular background. TSLint's still pretty prevalent. And then that caused a weird issue because of the code path, essentially, the dependencies for TSLint were never installed.
Oh, okay.
So that's supposed to be done when the Narwhal Angular plugin isn't initialized, right? And so it just happened to be a certain kind of code path where it's like, oh, and this is also like super spoiled because NX is so useful and does so many things for you. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, I got to install a dependency, But yeah, I mean, small quality of life improvements like that, but also one thing that I've actually joked with my buddy with, it's just like, dude, it seems like every time I find an issue with NX, someone's already working on a fix or something. And now when I find an issue that I can fix quickly, it's like exciting because it's almost like a race. It's like, I get this PR in because
if you don't fix it, there's a chance somebody else might come and fix it also.
Yeah, but no, and that's been an awesome thing about it too. It's been a real active community. I've been in the community Slack for a while, and there's a lot of good people in there. So overall, it's like there are hiccups, and I understand that with any project, but nothing's been a deal breaker, and things have iterated so fast that it's been a pleasure to use.
Cool. So what else, I guess, how else are you, you talked some about like leveraging NX. I know that I've at least seen that you've created a plugin or you talked about Ionic and React, and you actually created a plugin for that, right? So people can be able to spin that up more easily using NX.
So, like I had mentioned, I've been a fan of Ionic for a long time, and Ionic was based on exclusively Angular for years. And so that was kind of my preferred front end stack for like a lot of stuff was Angular and Ionic. If I was going to make a little hobby project, one of my pipe dreams that I never finish, it was kind of built in that. But then Ionic got React support, and I was like, ooh, I'll use that to help myself learn React a little better because I have to learn it for my job. And so that was a nice segue, right? And then shortly after that, NX came out with React support, and I was like, oh, wait a minute. These two things would go really well together. And because Angular support or Ionic support, I should say Ionic Angular support in NX, it's a mouthful. That is a lot better than Ionic React support in NX was. And so there was a lot more steps to get things working, a couple changes that you needed to make, a Webpack configuration change to support something that they needed. So that seemed like a good opportunity to make a plugin. I was like, this seems like a cool project. But this was also before community plugins were officially a thing.
Yeah, so you had to do some more hand rolling, and I'm gonna see if I can bring up your repo here so people can see it.
Sure. So yeah, that was actually like weird, odd timing. So
it's just like Ionic support and React, my favorite things are coming together.
Yeah.
Why not?
Exactly. It kind of was like a nice marriage of things. But yeah, so I remember actually, this goes back to NX8, the release of that. I remember looking in the release notes of the release blog post, and there was a section about like we're shifting to a pluggable packet structure,
Mm-hmm.
and I was like, so plugins.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of thought, like, is this something that people are going to leverage? I mean, am I the only one that's not seeing this right here? And it turns out there were some other things that people had made. Like there was I think it's pronounced crossplat or xplat.
XPlat, yeah.
Yeah. So there's like, there was some stuff out there that were basically plugins, right? Just not in the official community plugin sense. So I eventually found some stuff like that, and I was like, okay, I want to try and make an Ionic React plugin. And I started looking through the NX source code, and I found the package create NX plugin before it was publicly announced. And so I dug through the source code on that, and I was like, well, this seems to be obviously where things are going, so I'm going to use that because that seems really handy. And then I just kept plugging away. And basically with that, I was able to generate a React app. So people could probably do this for Angular apps too. Maybe, I don't know if I'm going to spend the time right now to start an Ionic Angular plugin, but if someone was inspired to do that, you could do it a similar approach. But I basically generate a React app, like a Narwhal React app, modify it to be an Ionic React app through the plugin schematics and whatnot. And yeah, it's kind of a wrap.
Cool.
So this is kind of, oh, go on.
Have you gotten some, I would imagine you're not the only person that wants to do this. I saw you wrote a blog post and everything. So I'm imagining that you've gotten some pretty good traction from this plugin.
Somewhat. I've got a few stars. I get people that comment here and there. I've had a few issues and stuff like that. It's been a slow growth. I have like weird little spikes on downloads and NPM, but I'm actually kind of enjoying this slow growth because I feel like I'm learning a lot and I'm fixing a lot of bugs.
Yeah.
And also that leads me, I guess, into my next plugin. This is like one piece of the Ionic puzzle.
Okay, so is this under a different repo or is it under this same one?
It's in a branch right now. It's very work in progress, and my commit history is shameful right now. But yeah, I've been working on a plugin for a technology that Ionic also makes called Capacitor, which so that's responsible. Like Ionic is the web component library at this point, right? You get tons of components for Ionic, Vue, and Angular. And then Capacitor is responsible for compiling that down to a native platform. So I'm working on a Capacitor plugin now. And once I get that kind of rolled out, I think I'm going to push this a lot more because, I think that's the really powerful combination, right? Not only can you make something look like a mobile app, but it can run as a mobile app.
Oh, yeah, for sure. So you'll have like more easier integration, right? Because you can, like, at least with NX, you can have your plugin, or you can have your plugins and your like apps within the same place, so you can more easily show even like demos for some reason. You can easily show how those things work together, right? Yep.
And Capacitor also works with any. It's not specific to Ionic at all. It's completely web framework agnostic. So it can take any app with any kind of component library as the UI and compile it down to mobile or Electron, which I think is more in beta. But yeah, so I think that, for not only my plugin, but for just the NX community in general, I'm kind of excited to get that out there and see how that could work in a mono repo.
Yeah, that definitely sounds pretty cool. I'm sure Mike Hardington and Max Lynch, the Ionic folks, will be happy to see more integrations like that. I know that Capacitor and even Stencil is becoming bigger and bigger since they did that rewrite. So yeah, for sure.
Yep, I've been a huge fan of what they've done. I've been following Ionic for years now, and it just gets better and better from what I've seen. So, yeah, I use these technologies a lot, and B, like, I'm stoked to see what the community will do with them too. But like I said, I'm kind of enjoying like the little bit of attention, the little bit of like fans I'm getting, that slow growth, and I'm going at my pace.
You're saying you want to ease into open source. That's what you're saying.
Yeah.
Like everybody start using it, and like you got 50 issues coming in, and people do a lot of things.
Open source has been like a big part. Like open source is what brought me into coding way back in the day. Like it's been a huge part of my upbringing as a developer, and so I know the potential, right? I've known a lot of people who that's kind of happened to, and it's like, it can get to a point, like especially if you're not, you're not getting paid to do it, right? But I absolutely love, the ideals behind it and whatnot. I'm happy to share my code, share everything. Sharing is what, got me started. So
yeah, for sure. And even, I've always enjoyed using open source, and like even working on open source now is like you said, very fulfilling. And even just as a thing you can go back and, like, I wrote this code a long time ago and it's still out there on GitHub so I can reference it later. I mean, if anything, it's like a historical, like an archive. I wish I could go back and see some of the terrible stuff that I wrote when I was like in high school, or just like personal projects, like even before I knew how to use Git, and using zip files to make copies of
I know.
sources.
I luckily I was able to find some of my, not my very first projects, but really close, which was 12 years ago. They were written in Lua, which I don't know if you've ever heard of that, but it's a scripting language. And I had made some this is how I got started, but I made some homebrew for the PSP. So I was really into modding and hacking my PSP and running emulators and stuff. And I was like, I want to do this. And so I wrote some code for this Lua program, and made little games and stuff like that. And that is horrendous code, but I'm so happy I have it.
Hey, those are some of the best times that I remember writing code when I was younger. It wasn't because I wasn't trying to be perfect, of course. I was just trying to get something working, right? Just trying.
Every time it worked, it was amazing.
yeah, for sure. But yeah, like I said, that I'm probably still chasing that thing today, where you get that rush of just being able to build stuff and kind of throw things out there. Of course, open source kind of puts a spotlight on that if you have stuff out there, but still, just being able to put stuff together, I think that's the thing that always has driven me personally.
Yeah, and just finally that feeling of giving back, right? So many people have helped me out. I've looked at so many people's code, referenced so many things. And I even had one of the plugin authors that is working on a stencil plugin that I think he was just added as one of your one of the official plugin authors. But I was talking to him and I was like, oh, I'd seen that. It's really cool. I'm interested in stencil too. He was like, yeah, your repository inspired me to get started. So I I looked at your thing and really wanted to try my own. And I was like, that's really cool.
Yeah, that's how it starts.
Feels good.
You go out, you put something out there, and then somebody else looks at, even just somebody else looking at the structure of what you've done and how you've ironed out all the some of the pitfalls that people, or at least the hurdles people run into when even just starting up a project, and being able to build off that, I think is super helpful, just by it being out there and somebody can clone it and then tweak it and make something else out of it. So
yeah, and that's also for a while I've been really wanting to get it more into blogging and stuff like that, and just been struggling to figure out what to write about. But with all this plugin stuff I've been doing, because it's so new, and even I've noticed Angular schematics in general doesn't have the best searchability on Google. It can be hard to find people writing about this stuff. So I've been taking the time to just take little small snippets on my dev.to blog, and just taking some of those hurdles that I had along the way, write a little thing about it, write the unit test for it. So I haven't gotten a ton of traction on that yet, but I'm hoping that as NX plugins continue to get bigger, those will be things that people can fall back on, and myself, right? I forget something.
It's that thing you can come back to years later and reference.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, I'm excited to continue to work with that. Maybe I will start up that Angular or Ionic Angular plugin, so I can.
Hey, you're definitely on the hook for it now. So
Yeah. I've had multiple people ask me already, like, "Where's this? When's this coming now?" I'm like, "Well," but no, I'm learning so much, and like I feel like I'm really getting in the groove, and things are iterating much quicker. I've got a really good idea of what I'm doing now, so anything's possible for sure.
cool. So I'll bring up. Well, guess we'll go ahead and wrap this one up. I'll bring up your blog post that you wrote here on Dev2, and it's under Dev2 / Devin Shoemaker. Is that right?
Yep.
Yeah. So go to. We're gonna do some. We're gonna bring it up here, and let's see if I can type this in.
Yep. And it looks like the post you have up here is kind of my release blog post, if you will.
Yeah.
When I initially released the Ionic React plugin.
Yeah. So check that out. Go to Dev2 / Devin Shoemaker. I put that in right, and then that'll link you to the post, and then y'all can follow for other posts that hopefully that you'll come up with more posts soon, right?
Yep, I'm rolling them out. I've got a few ideas. It's just finding time.
Cool. So is there anything else you want to plug before we head out?
No, not really. I mean, I don't tweet a ton. I pretty much just keep it down to business when it comes to Twitter, but feel free to follow me if you have questions. I'm happy to help out and chat. I'm definitely not shy on there. That's probably the best place to find me, though, or follow my blog. And yeah, just hopefully I'll have some more news with some new NX plugin stuff coming out soon.
Cool. So I think we'll close out on that note. I said thanks for coming on. It's been real nice talking to you, learning more about the projects, and like I said, hopefully we'll see more. I'm sure we'll see more from you soon. We'll just wait and see what you come up with next. So
yeah, absolutely. It's been great talking to you, and I really appreciate you for bringing me on. This has been a lot of fun.
Cool. We'll see y'all next time.
See ya.